Hey everybody, welcome to the Otherz Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Penny. Not joining me this week, as usual, is Rafa, as he is currently in the hospital awaiting the arrival of his new baby. So shout out to Rafa and Jules and good luck with everything. But with Rafa being away, as always, I had to bring in a special guest. It's hard to replace Rafa, but I think we've got an upgrade this time. I think we've gone up a level. Obviously, people listening to this podcast will hopefully know who this is, but if you don't, you're about to get a good lesson in your Neptunes and music history. And my guest is, I guess some people say the fourth member of the Neptunes. Would that be correct? But it is Mr. Mike Etheridge. How you doing, Mike?
I'm great, man. How are you?
I am pretty good, thank you. So do you like that title, the fourth member of the Neptunes?
I would say just a member, but actually,
Okay.
but in my book, though, seriously, in all seriousness, it's going to be titled Through the Eyes of the Third Neptune.
Okay.
And the only reason I put it that way is because I kind of like look at the order of the Neptunes in the roles that everyone played. You know what I'm saying? So Chad was like the producer. Pharrell was the producer / writer. And then I was like the singer, rapper, whatever I was doing. And Shae actually started as a dancer. So he, you know what I mean? It really wasn't so much musical because we were all three band members. That's what made us unique. All three of us were band members. So we all were studying music at the time of the formation of the group versus Shae, who wasn't in band.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that timeline.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go back to the start then, because I'm always intrigued when I speak to people that are musicians and that are into music, kind of how they first got into music. So like when you were a kid growing up in Virginia, like what's playing around you at that time and in your household? What are you kind of gravitating towards in terms of types of music and artists and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think what made me different than the other members of the group was that my main musical influence as a child was gospel music. So my parents were very church driven in the Lord. You know, it wasn't something that, I just came upon later in life and got this massive revelation that God existed or that there was, a relationship to be had in that way. It was always ingrained in me since I was a child. So it was like, that's what was played in the house, all gospel music. But, obviously that's where R&B derived from. So you're getting the Sam Cooke, you're getting the Aretha Franklin, you're getting the C.L. Franklin, you're getting the Mighty Clouds of Joy, you're getting the Shirley Caesar. I'm getting all of those influences. And then what made it interesting was I would go to my aunt's house who lived in Norfolk, Virginia. And they, were younger and they were into music. So they had all of these vinyl records. Back then it was records, before CDs and everything. It was vinyl and tapes came along. But it was, and I remember 8-track days. 8 tracks is when I started listening to music, you know what I mean? Because my dad had all these old gospel 8 tracks. So that was my experience early. Then of course I was going to church. I would be in those services where they may not even have the musician there that night. It would just be them starting to sing, you know what I mean? So a testimony service. So that old spiritual vibe, I came up under that. And then I would go to my aunt's house in Norfolk, Virginia. My mom had 6 sisters. So they were all, and 5 brothers. So we'd all be over there.
Wow.
And they were younger, so they would play records for me. That's when I got introduced to Motown, Stevie Wonder, and then they were diverse. So we're talking Barbra Streisand, we're talking Hall & Oates, we're talking all Kiss, just all of the stuff that was happening at that time.
Yeah.
So I had this mesh of gospel, R&B, classic, rock, you name it, it's always been that way.
A little bit of everything.
Exactly.
It's similar to me listening to music growing up sort of in the early 80s.
Mm-hmm.
My family aren't kind of necessarily into music or anything, but there was always music around.
Right.
And obviously with it being the early 80s, Michael was, the biggest artist on the planet.
Oh, yeah, Michael Jackson too.
So Michael just endlessly, but then, George Michael and...
Another one of my faves.
Yeah, yep. Just lots of different artists. The radio was George always
Michael
on in the
was
house.
Awesome. Yeah, George Michael was,
yes,
was dope.
Very much so. So you're getting this kind of mishmash of everything. When do you kind of yourself start to really think, okay, I can be involved in this, whether it's kind of singing, producing, playing music?
I mean, honestly, the thought of being involved in it, I guess it would evolve then early because then my uncles were hip hop era came along. So then my uncles would give me tapes. I would take their tapes. And it would be like Biz Markie and the Jutes Crew and the Rapping Duke. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I was coming up under that. I was coming up under Big Daddy Kane and Cool G Rap and all of that. So at that time, you had like Freddie Jackson, a R&B artist that I would listen to. The radio was big at that time. Midnight Star, Ashford and Simpson. So what I would do was I would listen to these songs on the radio, record them with my tape recorder by the radio, and then I would play the tape back and I would write down all the lyrics to the song. So that's how I started learning. Then I would sing them, or whether it was raps, I would do the same thing. I would write all the lyrics down to the raps, and then I would recite the raps back with the rappers. Or
it's weird. I did that as a kid as well.
Yeah, and sing the songs.
I've got no musical ability whatsoever, obviously, but it's just weird that I happen to also do that. Gravitated to music that way.
That was literally my development of writing, I would say, and listening and understanding. Because I think early on I realized that my parents, because I was a drummer, so early on my parents realized I had musical talent. So they bought me a drum set when I was like, I want to say 7, maybe even younger. You know what I mean? So I started then playing the drums and doing the music. I would put the drum set on, put the radio on, try to play with the radio. So it was a lot of like things that I did that were musically aligned, if you will, because I just had a musical talent. It wasn't, like I said, I was somebody I came into later. It was always a part of my life coming up. So that's how that was.
And in terms of
hold on, I don't mean to cut you off, but what I was going to say is the desire or the understanding of that I could even possibly be in the music industry, that didn't come till way later. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Way later.
And in terms of sort of the singing and stuff like that, are you kind of participating in stuff at school, in kind of choirs, in a church and things like that at that time?
Yeah. I'm in the choir at church. I'm in the children's choir. So at this point, I'm able to sing the songs better than some of the adults in the church. So they like, wait a minute, this kid is like, so now I'm up in front of all the people singing, in the Sunday school programs. And then when I was in 5th grade, I was asked my music teacher, because I was like even though I was gifted and, church kid, I was a little problem in school. So
you had your moments.
Yeah. So my teacher, she realized like, wait a minute, this kid's gifted. He can sing. So there was the Christmas Carol with Tiny Tim, and I played Tiny Tim. I was a kid and I had my crutch and everything, and I learned all the lines and I learned all the music, and I had a solo, and I sung "You Don't Need Gifts at Christmas" at the Christmas play for that event in 5th grade, and got a standing ovation at my elementary school. So it was kind of like, okay, wait a minute, this kid is different than the rest of these kids. You know what I mean? As far as his talent goes. And these in the play was all 6th graders. So I was the only 5th grader in the play. You had to audition, I think. Yeah, and I sung the song, and it was a rap. You know what I mean? So yeah, man, that's when I really, and like I said, church was such a big part. Again, my church recorded an album. I was a part of the choir, and I was a young man singing with the adults. So I ended up with a record on that project, on the church choir album. I ended up with a song. My music director, Andrew Williams, who was like the mentor, I would say, from the gospel perspective in church and everything. He gave me a record, and he said, yo, you gonna sing this song? And I did the solo on the record. And yeah, so I was always like, this isn't, like I said, it's always been a talent and a gift from God.
Yeah.
The music. Yeah.
Amazing. And like when you were doing that school play, and you say, got a kind of great standing ovation, did that give you a little taste of the fame, I guess? The adulation of an audience? Did you enjoy that?
I enjoyed it, but I didn't even think of it that way. At that time, you're like young, and all you care about is the fact that you love to sing, or you love to do music, or and write, or just the music makes you're drawn to it. Now we had a talent show in the 6th grade, so I went ahead and like put together a little group, and I wrote the raps for everybody in the group, and it was 2 friends of mine, and we did the talent show. So that was another moment. Like I was always pressing, like, yeah, I got to do something with this music.
Were you kind of one of those kind of, I don't know how to phrase it, without offending anybody. Let's just say, were you one of those kind of like precocious kids? Or were you a bit more kind of low key? Did you know you were special and you kind of tried to live up to that?
Yeah,
or were you a bit more?
I definitely knew it. Yeah, I'm not going to act like I didn't know it. You know what I'm saying? And my mom, she was like my biggest fan. So,
Yeah.
and it wasn't a matter of me just like being, I just was gifted, man, musically. And that's something that didn't run in my family. I was adopted. So like, I'm the only dude that's like got any type of artistic ability. Everybody else is building houses, nailing stuff, working with tools. They want to be in the yard, cutting grass and all that type of stuff, working for the city. And no disrespect to that, but I knew early that wasn't for me.
So all those kind of aunts and uncles and then kind of cousins and things that you've got in the family, it didn't sort of seep into them, but it found its way to you.
Well, like I said, I was adopted. So
So it's in the blood in your case, maybe.
Yeah. And then I did eventually meet my birth parents and family and everything. So my natural family. So yeah, there are people in there that could sing and they're a little bit more artistic. You know what I'm saying? Like the family that raised me is very more educational driven and things of that nature and more like industrial. So in my case, there was an artistic ability that you just didn't see in everyone else.
And you were saying like your mum was your kind of biggest fan. So was she kind of egging you on to do more, to get involved in more stuff as well at the time?
I think she also helped to develop the gift that I had because she loved music as well. You know what I'm saying? So she was like a singer and she would sing in the choir and she could sing pretty well. So she was like the person who was like nourishing that, that gift because we would sing together. Yeah.
I imagine that's a great experience, especially now as being a bit older and being able to look back and have that experience with your mum as a kid.
Definitely. And she passed away like unexpectedly, kind of early, you know what I'm saying? Than I would have ever expected. So yes, those memories are definitely like golden.
Yeah, amazing. So you're kind of going through school and we've got to about the 5th or 6th grade here. So let's get to the inevitable. Around what age were you, or what grade was it when, you kind of linked up with Pharrell and Chad and Shae and started that kind of initial friendship?
Yeah, that would have been 10th grade when I went to high school. He was, Pharrell was older than me, so he was already in the band, already in the culture of the high school, which was Princess Anne High School. I'm coming in from the band program in the middle school, which was Independence. So when I get there to Princess Anne, that's how I meet Pharrell. I don't just meet him in the hallway or something. I meet him before the school year even starts because the band starts to practice in the summertime. So that's how we met. And once I got out there with him in the band, obviously because of his musical talent and my musical talent, it became an immediate connection. And him and Chad had already linked up at that point, but they didn't, it was just kind of like him going to Chad's house and them tinkering around on the keyboard kind of thing. Okay.
Yeah.
But now you bring me into the equation who can sing and stuff. So that makes it like, okay, we have, it's like a jam session now. We all play a part in this making of music. And Pharrell was really gifted on the drums as well. So that's kind of like, and our band program required us to like read music, learn time signatures and things of that nature. So we grasped an early understanding of music theory versus just, off the cuff.
Instead of just playing, you've got that kind of technical theory knowledge behind you to sort of back it up and have a sort of, I guess, a base and a foundation to work up from.
Right. So when we got to the studio and started working, at that level, it was never a question of how many counts is 4 bars. You know what I mean? Like we knew that early.
Yeah. And was it just the music that kind of made you guys click, or was there any other kind of interests that you sort of shared and stuff? Or was it just the love and the ability for music?
It was the music, but it was also just the friendship. We were young kids just having fun, going to get chicken wings. Nobody's got no money. You know what I mean? We're figuring it out and we're having a great time, enjoying life and making music that just from the soul. It wasn't anything like motivating it. It wasn't money motivating it. It wasn't fame motivating it. It was just the love for the music. And that's what made a lot of it pure. Yeah. And that's why records like Look in the Water are still infamous and classic, because the way that they were created were in a space that, there was no outside influences. No one was trying to make a hit record. It was just dope.
Yeah. Nice. And so how are you guys kind of, putting stuff together at that point? Is it the story we all kind of see in here, up in Chad's kind of room above the garage or whatever it was, and like you say, just sort of jamming? And when was there a conscious effort to actually sort of say, okay, we should start recording something, anything?
Well, I mean, okay. So yeah, I mean, at that point we were already kind of like you said, the jam sessions and Shad and Pharrell being, and I think Pharrell curiosity of just the whole keyboard thing and all that. But now you get Teddy Riley builds the studio, okay, within walking distance of our high school. You can see the school, like you can't even. We're out practicing band, and that's ironic. I never even really thought about it, but while we're out practicing or doing our drum stuff, now you see the studio. So we ain't even
So it's
focused on
literally
the
in
band.
line of sight from where you are.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. It's
Wow.
right there by our high school. Literally, there's a body of a little small pond separating the studio and the school. So at that point, when the studio is built and we're already like into the music thing, that's when there's this understanding that, wait a minute, maybe we should try to make something else, because now there's a place and that's Teddy Riley, the guy that made this and that. And I'm really excited because obviously, I'm really crazy into R&B. And so, yeah, it was just like, okay, we need to get this together. Now, at that point, once we start doing that, and it evolved, the relationship evolved. We're working at Chad's more. Pharrell's coming up with concepts, names of the group. We're all and we would meet over a mutual friend's house named Gary Gnu, we call him. But he was in Virginia Beach, and his mother lived in Guam, but she had given him and his brother their own place. So we had like an apartment to crash at and like have fun and do all this stuff. So yeah, that's where we started developing, just like this group thing and taking it seriously. Like, okay, well, maybe we could get with him and let him hear the music. Oh my God, if he hears us, man, so that's how it goes. And that's when Pharrell created Look in the Water around that time, which was like a R&B record, and said, Mike, here's a record, and we do this and that. We went to Chad's, recorded it. We already had that record. We had actually performed the record at a high school talent show, but we hadn't made it yet to be heard by Teddy at this point. But there was someone that heard us by the name of Omar Chandler that sang Joy and Pain with Rob Bass. He has a child with Teddy Riley's sister. So he's the one who really put it into Teddy's head that there's some kids the kids that keep coming up here, knocking on the door, and when the security keeps running them off, I heard them and they're dope. Like, so and then one day Teddy says, and believe it or not, I had kind of forgot like how everything happened because it's been so many years. So, but then finally I've been able to put all the pieces together. So this is probably the first time on your show, other than another interview that I did, that people will get. And then in my book, I'll really go deep into it. But yeah, that's how it happened, man. We got the meeting to be able to go into the studio. It wasn't like one day he said, okay, just let him in. No, it was planned. After school today, we finally going to be able to sing for Teddy or do something for Teddy. So that's how that happened, man. And that day we got in there, I sung Look in the Water, and the rest was history. You know what I'm saying? It opened the door for us to be in that studio whenever we felt like it.
Wow. So before the kind of now famous talent show that you had at the high school, the kind of Teddy helped organize and attended, were you guys kind of still around the studio before that anyway, trying to make yourselves known?
Well, the thing is, I'm glad you asked that, because we didn't perform at Teddy Riley's talent show.
Okay.
Contrary to whatever narrative or popular belief that is out there, we never performed at that talent show. Matter of fact, the Master Plan Collector CD that I put out on my website, gnexlifeshopify.com, it also comes with a program. You have one. So when you look
I've got one. Yeah, I've got one here somewhere. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. No, don't worry. You don't got to get it. We know you got it. But when you look at the program, you'll actually see a list of artists under Future Records, and it says The Building Children. That's the where you see Pharrell's signature on the program. That our name at the time, before it was the Neptunes, but The Building Children was our name before the Neptunes, and that's what you see on that program. Because that program, we were just in attendance at the talent show. When that show happened, we were already in the process, or already had signed to Markel Riley, who was Teddy Riley's brother, his production company called Funky Mama Records.
Nice name.
Yeah. So that's how that was.
And when you kind of signed that deal, and it being a production deal, did that change your individual view, or your view kind of as a group, as to how you should go forward? Because obviously with it being a production deal, you're not necessarily artists that are creating your own music for yourselves. So did you kind of view things a bit differently then at all?
No. Because I mean, we didn't know what a production deal was. All we know was getting a deal.
We should make
We didn't
music.
care.
Yeah.
And we were getting like 10 grand or something. And we got to split that. So it was like, what? Yeah, sign it. But the production just meant, like you said, it was something I think Teddy was just really trying to develop for his brother at the time because he didn't really see what to do with us.
Yeah.
But he had Blackstreet. He's focusing on Blackstreet's new album, working with all of these incredibly, A-list celebrities, Bobby Brown, Whitney Houston, Michael Jackson. So, I mean, at that point, you know what I mean? He was in demand.
It's not a bad environment to be around when you're that
No,
young.
it's not. It's not. It's an amazing. I mean, I've definitely had the opportunity to be in the studio, just hanging out with a lot of different people during that time. Young, I'm 15, so I just used to be mad because I had to go home, while everybody else that was like Pharrell was like 18, more liberal parents, and I got to be in the house. So I was gonna be mad because I didn't get to you know what I mean? But it was always that way. You know what I'm saying? God has always made me different, and I just had to accept that. Like, you're not gonna be, even when I went into the industry, it still was with me. That part of my upbringing that only allowed me to go so far. You know what I mean? It's just who I am.
Yeah. And then spending that sort of amount of time around the sort of studio that young as well, you must be kind of soaking up all this information, technical information in how you make music, how you write music and all that kind of thing. Have you got anything that you can kind of look back on and say, this is the one thing that I learned from Teddy and Teddy's team as well around him that you kind of still stick to, to this day?
I mean, I wish I could narrow it down. It's everything. You know what I mean? Because from vocal arranging to vocal recording to the amount of time and energy that is put into recording vocals when it comes to singing. Rapping is a little easier because if you're good, you could just, knock it out. One take type of deal, two, whatever.
Yeah.
But singing requires another level of execution that may take a little bit of time. You might have to spend a few hours to get that one note. So that's what I learned with that. And just sitting with Teddy. I would just go to the studio and sit because you got to think a lot of times, obviously my project wasn't the super priority because Blackstreet was trying to meet deadlines all the time. So me and Chad did a lot of work together. Now that I mean, a lot. Serban Geneva, I don't know if Geneva, who is an infamous engineer, he actually did a lot of work with Neve and, Euphonics. But Serban was my engineer for years of just engineering our sessions. Yeah, so me and Chad would be in there just working, because you got to realize I was the first one, fast forward past the production deal, okay? So now the Neptunes, everyone's kind of because Pharrell and Teddy kind of did this, okay? I'll get into that in my book for whatever reasons that I'll share later. They did this. So with that being said, now everyone's scattered. They're working on their stuff. I'm, trying to figure me out because I'm singing and doing some other stuff. But it's we're just trying to figure it out. And I think they start going more into production. I'm doing more of the singing in, you know what I mean? So at this point, we're not going to the studio anymore because of that broken relationship. You know what I mean? So I'm I'm not saying in the middle of it, but I still kept my relationship with Teddy or Future Records. So, and they saw me as someone that they could benefit from because of my singing ability. So, and he saw my talent. Teddy really believed in what I could do. That was dope. So I hooked up with a friend of mine and I recorded my own demo. And I was like, well, we can go take this to Teddy because I know I can get in there and let him hear it. And that's when I did Look in the Water for Real in the studio at Master Sounds. And I recorded that demo, you know what I mean? And I got the meeting with Teddy. That's how I secured my own solo deal at that point. Nobody had a deal, at that point. So that's when I was able to bring in Chad at that point because Ted's like, man, I love what you guys do together. So that's where you get the Mike Etheridge album that has him and Chad Hugo on it. That's just me and Chad working together in his room at this point. Us. Because now Chad gets $50,000 from my project to be able to go buy all the equipment he needs. He bought a new Benz. Chad is the man now. Chad. If you don't, you need Chad. Yeah. And Chad has the resources now to actually be a real producer because of that deal that was signed within at the time Interscope that I was, I had that deal. So yeah, that's how that went. So now that's
Okay.
how we're in the studio every day learning, every day creating. Chad is no longer in his room. He's in Future Records producing.
In a
That's what,
proper grown-up environment, yeah.
he's learning how to mix. He's learning everything. So whatever progression he makes after that, and the Neptunes make after that, you got to give Teddy the props for that, because he was the one who provided the resources to get Chad where he needed to go through my project.
Yeah. It's a great little in for Chad, I guess, there, having, that sort of studio, Teddy backing it, all that equipment, that, as a producer, that must have just really given him that sort of boost.
I mean, you gotta, because now he gets to learn. Chad didn't know anything about a studio. He knows Chad was playing piano at 6, so he's a great musician, and saxophone, everything, music genius. So, but studio, no, you don't know anything. But when you go there, now you become a connoisseur of greatness when it comes to studio work, mixing, all of that. And you take that with you when you go. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And how were you how were you on the kind of technical side in the studio? Is that something you kind of picked up quite quickly? Because there are some artists are just like, well, I just sing. I don't want to know about all the buttons and things. Other artists are very involved.
Well, you're going to absorb it just because you're in there. Yeah. But I never wanted to be like, you know what I mean? And even later on, like I could produce a little bit and all of that. But my thing is I always knew, like, just stick to what you're great at. Now, you know what I mean? So I'm more of a writer, melodies, and just I'm a songwriter too, as well as a drummer. You know what I mean? So, and I hear melodies and things of that nature. It was more so like and what I would do, and that's why when I go in the studio to record an artist, like if you hear Stephen Parks, you're going to hear Brittany Terry, you're going to hear different people. Brittany Terry, another artist on a single of mine. Like when you hear them, that you're going to tell that they were produced versus just in the studio singing. Anybody that is on my project, you're going to hear that with. Slater Joel, the breakthrough record that I put out that went crazy. I mean, it's just a difference when I get in the studio because of my background, because I've been around. I know what needs to be done. I'm not trying to guess or figure it out. Like, I know.
Yeah. And you mentioned briefly there the Master Plan album, as you say, available online. We'll put a link in the show notes to that. And I've got my copy here that you kindly signed and sent over.
Yes, sir.
Obviously, Ad's working a lot there. And there's stuff in there that does sound very early Neptunes-esque in terms of, I've got some notes around some of the songs. I listened back to it again recently because I had heard Master Plan a long time ago and then I'd completely forgot about it. And obviously then you were kind of promoting the CD coming out and stuff. So I went back and listened to it again. Obviously it's, online everywhere, Apple Music, Spotify, all those places. So people make sure you go and listen to it as well. But yeah, I was sort of making some notes because I sort of forgot all about it. So no doubt, I know it sounds quite sort of Neptunes-esque with that stabby kind of synth. And then also, but to a slightly lesser extent, Before We Get Too Close and Circles as well.
Oh, yeah. Chad, listen, I mean, No Doubt was created probably later on too. So that makes sense. But Chad, obviously, the Neptunes had their own sound and Chad was 50% of that. So you're going to hear that show up in like No Doubt, you know what I mean? Now, what I think differs is that Pharrell's drum patterns and stuff brings an element to their production that's different. So that mesh together with them, I think that's what makes them unique, where you won't necessarily hear that with the stuff that's on the master plan. But No Doubt, definitely. Now, Before We Get You Close, I don't know what bag Chad was in on that. Chad just that's one of my favorite records, and it's so different. Like, to use that Biggie sample that way, that's when actually Biggie was like, you know what I mean? So when Chad came to me with that, it wasn't just that, that's not the Biggie sample. I'm thinking about What Can I Do? When he came to me with that, I was like, bum, bum. I was like, what? Yeah, Chad is crazy, man. Like, he's just an amazing mind, musical mind.
Yeah.
But yeah, Before We Get Too Close is definitely uniquely Chad, that beat.
Yeah. And then there's also I noticed some Michael Jackson vibes on there with Episode, which I think Teddy co-produced maybe or featured on.
Oh, no. Episode is all Teddy.
Okay, it is all Teddy.
All Teddy production. The records that are Teddy's, you're going to know they're Teddy's. Except for maybe Don't Change Your Mind. which he shocked me on that because I didn't even know he could produce something that soulful. It was like a D'Angelo on steroids or something.
Yeah.
It was crazy. New
And
Jack Soul.
Yeah. And we should just interject and mention, because I was going to mention it at the start and completely forgot, the very unfortunate passing of D'Angelo that we heard about only a couple of hours ago before we're recording this. And another Virginia native as well.
Yes. Rest in peace.
Definitely. And amazing how, I went through Instagram before we started recording, and I'd say, obviously, I follow a certain set of people that are, into music similar to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I was amazed at how many of the stories and the posts are all just like about D'Angelo, and every person saying this album was part of my life here and this album was part of my life there. And I think you said something similar as well in your post.
Facts.
But it goes to show what an amazing artist D'Angelo is, that even when I was sat here getting ready to speak to you, my girlfriend who's in the other room, she's Finnish. We're out here in Finland. She's from the countryside in Finland. And even she messaged me and was just like, shit, I've just seen your post, Mike's post that you reshared. This album was, all my life in these kind of years and stuff. That's how far and wide he reached and how brilliant the music was.
Yeah. And that album, 1995, because that was the year when I really, I want to say, I believe 95. Yep. 95 probably would have been the year I signed that deal. It would have been like, so that's like, I had, I just remember because I had 2 cars during that time frame that I bought. So all I remember was that record playing in both of those cars.
Can tell you got a deal around that time if you got 2 cars.
Well, they weren't at the same time, but
okay, you weren't balling quite that big at that point. I wasn't balling.
I wasn't ready. I wasn't with the big boys, but I was good. Hey, look, for my age group and not for that to be my job, it was a big deal.
You're doing okay.
Yeah,
definitely. All right, cool. So moving on from there, one thing I was going to ask, because I did see you you were talking in an interview a little while back about your time kind of in the studio with Teddy over the years. You kind of alluded to it earlier on, being around different artists and stuff like that. I did hear or read you were in the studio for at least one Michael Jackson session. Is that true?
Oh yeah, I mean, but the thing is, I wasn't in there in that room. I was there, but not in the actual session because nobody could be in there.
You're in the vicinity, let's say.
Yeah, I was at the studio, but you couldn't be in the session. That's not going to happen.
I've been lucky enough to speak to a few people over the years that have worked with Michael or met Michael and stuff like that. I always ask, if you have an anecdote of any kind. I don't know if you do.
No, I wish I did.
Nothing specific.
Other than this is just a wave from the bus. Because see, that's the thing. When he would come, a lot of times he would record on the bus too.
Okay,
he wouldn't even come in the studio.
So just park up kind of outside and do it there. And
they had a full studio on that thing.
Wow. I know Pharrell did that at one point as well when they were touring a lot. Just, bought a giant bus and put a studio inside it. I guess when you're, doing that well, that famous, you're moving around that much, it kind of makes sense. Yeah. One thing I also wanted to mention, just because of the recent resurgence of clips. Obviously, you've worked with, I know you produced a track for Malice, is that right? On Hear Ye Him?
Yeah. Yes, sir. I did. I actually did. Yeah. I did a track for him on that. I was around for that whole project. You know what I mean? Just kind of like during that time, we would talk every day. You know what I mean? Meet up every day a lot and just work together. And he was like, just working on a gospel project, man. And that's what he put out. So yeah, I was a part of it.
And how is that? Obviously, you've mentioned yourself. Is it right to say your music is Christian music? I don't know how to categorize it.
Well, that's good. I'm glad you don't.
Okay.
Because I say that in one of my records that I'm more than a genre. You know what I mean? So I don't even know. But I will say that you're going to get Christianity in the music. And it's going to be it's going to be God driven. So I think Christian music, and I like the fact I had just recently been posted.
Is it kind of good to see, especially Malice, kind of come full circle now, back to kind of rapping, but again, doing it on his own terms? Obviously, he was with that album he put out that you were working on. It was more Christian, religious, whatever you want to call it. He then stepped away for many years and didn't want to kind of be too involved in the music side of things while he did what he needed to do with his life.
Right.
Obviously now, yeah, they've kind of come all the way back round. Album of the year, perhaps, performing at the Vatican. Like, that must be amazing to see for somebody that you've worked with as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, the thing is, the Clips were never like, it always been, a top tier group. So I didn't expect like for them to make music again. I would expect people to embrace it, so I wasn't shocked or anything like that, because I think that, they've always been loved and been a dope group, probably one of the best groups, if not
Most definitely
the best group.
Yeah, it's certainly up there for me. That's for sure.
I didn't think it was strange for them to have success at what they were doing at all.
But good to see them kind of come all the way back round after all those years away and
oh yeah, man,
do it at such a high level all over again for, let's say, older gentlemen that we are. We're all sort of middle-aged now, and that's it.
Seasoned.
That's the word.
Yeah, and it's good, because it lets artists like myself and just other artists, period, know that there's no time limit or age limit on creativity. So I think that's really good for the culture.
Definitely, I think good for the industry as a whole, because I think we've had that period maybe in the early 2000s where the dynamics of the music industry changed a bit with streaming and with the addition of lots more marketing, and it became a younger person's game almost. You had to be young, attractive, all that kind of thing to be able to be marketed. Not that you're not attractive, obviously. I'm not saying that.
And I mean, I think that too. Like when you put Louis Vuitton, Pharrell Williams, the history of the Clips, and their greatness as a group, Rock Nation. When you put all of those elements together, I mean, if you lose, it'll be a miracle for you to lose.
Yeah.
I mean,
you've got to do a really screwed it up to be. Messing that up.
How could you lose with all of that behind you? You can't. You have great music. I mean, I think this is like, it's just, and I think that's what other older seasoned artists may need to look at, is that you need the marketing dollars behind you. You need these, you need some type of machine behind you to get you everywhere you need to be in order for there to be that type of awareness of your project. We saw other artists around the same age that have the same type of following, the same, greatness too, but they didn't do as well because they didn't have those elements with them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We were already, and that's the thing, the world was already waiting for that based on the Louis Vuitton ad, runway walks and all of that stuff. So, I mean, you're already promoting the records. So like I said, I was not shocked at all at the success of the project because of the elements that were behind it. I was expecting it to be successful, as everyone else should have.
Yeah. And I think they kind of took it back a little bit in terms of the marketing. They went a bit more old school, authentic. They turned up to all the radio shows, did this just amazing rollout basically for the whole album. Like you say, teasing the individual tracks at the runway shows, getting them even walking at the shows as well. Just to kind of build up that whole anticipation. They did like a really great job around all of that.
That was really playing really well.
Yeah. So let's get back to yourself and some of the music you're working on at the moment and stuff you've got kind of coming up. So you recently had the single out, The Count, with Stephen Parks that you mentioned.
Yeah. I mean, The Count is out now, which is a great record. And, I love the record because we live in that streaming era and all of that. But for me, this song is really like a story, because you get to hear a lot of great things in that record. And I think it embodies where I'm headed as far as like, and where I've been. I mean, I haven't really said the Neptunes in the record or anything like that. So that kind of like, I'm glad I got to put this record out because, and it gives my perspective. So I think every artist has a purpose in what they promote and what they bring to the table. And I think, Count Your Blessings really brings to the table a thought process that we don't really see when it comes to maybe so much in the hip hop industry, because it's more about what I have. It's more about how much my chain costs. It's more about all these cars I have and I made all this money and I'm better than you. You know what I mean? So that's part of like what hip hop says. But that record really says, it speaks to counting your blessings and embracing as the Bible says, Paul said it best, whatever state I'm in, I've learned to be content. So I think as you get older, you need to learn how to be content in whatever state you're in, whether you're up, whether you're down, whether you got it or you don't, you know what I mean? So that record really is special to me, man, because it's a reality record. You know, we're not talking about the 1% in that record. We're talking about the reality that most people live, which is where you need to be in a space where you're, and everybody should be, even if you're a millionaire, but we all should be in a space that, or millions of dollars, we should all be in a space where we're thankful for what we have, and we really begin to assess, how blessed am I? Because when you really look at it, man, no matter how much you're going through, no matter what you're facing, there's going to be always somebody that looks at your life and say, you're doing good. And you're like, huh? No, I'm not. But you know what I mean? So I think that's what Count Your Blessings is about, man. And that's why I love being able to do what I do, man, because you're going to get something different from me. That's not, you know, what necessarily culture is pushing right now.
And that's what I was going to kind of ask as well. Like, in 2025, how do you go about kind of writing and making music? It sounds like you're kind of sticking to your principles, sticking to the topics that you're thinking about daily and that you love. Do any of the kind of new trends and influences kind of seep into any of your sort of writing process or anything, or production process? Do you think about like what's out there at the moment, and like, not that you need to replicate something, but it kind of has to have this sound or anything like that?
I really don't. Like, that's probably why, you know what I mean? It's just organic. And a lot of it now, and this is why I love what I'm doing now, because when I was making R&B music and doing the Master Plan project, it was more driven toward thinking of what's going to work, you know, what's a concept, and, you know, blah, 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 doing it that way. Now, I'm going to give you what I'm feeling in my heart that I want to share. And I think that's what makes it really great. And also, I'm giving you my own personal experiences on this project, because people don't know me and know who I am or anything like that. So a lot of people, and the people that do, you know, they're connoisseurs and they follow. But now people are starting to be like, oh, okay, wait a minute. So I want to make sure the music invites them into the journey of Mike Etheridge and Mike E, and who he is as a man and a person, and why he left the music industry. And you're going to hear that in the music, and, you know, not why he doesn't do secular music. So I would say culturally, no, I do not allow culture to dictate anything that I write about or that I say in my music. That's why I'm always going to be controversial, and I will always be a disruptor, because I'm going to always bring in something that nobody really wants to hear. Okay. We want to, because our flesh wants to be gratified. That's the nature of who we are as people. We don't want to we don't want to like deny our flesh the gratification of material things, food, or whatever it is. We don't want. It's not just, you know, sexual acts, all these things. Like, come on, what do you mean I can't do that? Okay. And that's where I'm at in my life. And I haven't always been there. But as I grew in my journey with God and walk with the Lord, man, he just starts to chisel and refine you. So that's what you're going to hear in the music. You know what I mean? It's not, and believe me, all of these records will not be, that's why I'm excited about, I got to keep dropping music, because, you know, you put out one song, you don't want people to think that's what the next record is going to sound like. Even though Count Your Blessings is like, it has this urban hip hop vibe that's crazy. And the way that I'm delivering it, you still are getting a lot of biblical stuff in there. You know what I mean? So I don't want people to think that that's what the whole project will be. It will be stuff in there like that. But I got a song called Hold On with Brittany Tierra that's going to be a little bit different, even though it's still inspiring and encouraging the listener to hold on to their faith in God. And of course, my faith is Christian faith, you know, and it's in there, but it's not going to be as driven as Count Your Blessings. So I want people to know, like, you're going to get the R&B. I got a record where I'm singing, the hook, I'm rapping. I'm doing everything on this album. You ain't even heard me sing on this album yet, but you will. You understand? So it's not going to just be rapping. You know, this is going to be like the Mike Etheridge, the guy that can sing, rap, write, pick beats. You're going to get it all. But I'm telling you, by the end of it, you're going to say, man, you know, I get it now. I get him. You know what I mean? And then too, like I said, I want to share my experiences. and different things. So yeah.
And when you're kind of writing stuff now and the stuff you've written recently, are you looking back on a lot of past experiences and taking kind of things from them, or are you more generally kind of forward looking and conceptual with the stuff you're writing about?
I think that it's definitely some stuff from the past, because I've realized that this was a therapy album for me. So a lot of it you'll hear like, oh wow, I didn't know that, or I didn't know that, or and then there'll be moments of spiritual introspection. So I think that I didn't pick and choose like past or present, but like you'll hear something about what I'm going through right now. Like if I'm going through something with my kids, I one particular record, when I say my 2 sons fresh home from cases for concealing the 4-pound, like I'm talking about the fact that both of my sons are just now finishing prison sentences for gun charges. So what I'm saying is, you're going to get the pain, you're going to get the reality. Because see, what a lot of people don't know, man, is that when I came out of I've always been involved with like another side of Virginia, which is like the street side of Virginia. But like the drug world and all of that has always been a part of what I've done. Even when I got the deal with Teddy, because my best friend was a kingpin at the time. And that's how we were able to record the demo in the studio and get it done to go to Teddy. So, as I continued in the industry, that was a part of a pull. Okay. So when I came out of the industry after the Master Plan project, the first thing I did was find a way to make money. So that's what I think people are going to get the continuation of Mike E through this album, to be like, well, what happened after Capitol Records? What were you doing after that? So it wasn't just an immediate, he's pastoring, he loves the Lord. I mean, saving everything. There's a story that needs to be told. And I hope, especially, I realize that my mission is really just to encourage someone that may be, because I know a lot of guys that have been to prison, a lot of guys that are struggling right now to figure it out. What's my next move? I want to be the poster child for, look, you can just go through all of these things and still, I'm gonna be 50 next year and still have purpose, and God use you in a special way to be a blessing to people.
That's really great to hear, and I love the honesty that you're obviously going to bring to the album and to the tracks. And I
don't mean to cut you off, but the great thing about now, also, I think I need to add, is being independent, not having any pressures, or not trying to it doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? This is like, I'm just doing this to speak the message that God has given me. You know what I mean? And I think that's the important thing to realize, like, as a Christian artist. So I can call myself that now, I guess, since they've said that already. As a Christian artist, you have a responsibility. Like, a lot of people are artists that make Christian music sometimes, or throw God in there sometimes. That's not a Christian art. I'm a Christian artist in the sense that I'm an artist who's a Christian, but my music is always going to glorify God in some way. There's always going to be...
You preach what you actually believe as well.
Yeah, and there's going to be some way to tie it back in. You know what I mean? So that's what I think is important. You'll never hear me, get on here and call a woman the B word, or even, what I'm saying, I try to stay away from using the N-word or anything, like, because at the end of the day, I'm trying to show that, listen, you can have these issues, but we should be constantly being sanctified and becoming better.
And as I was mentioning, I sort of love the honesty of that, and it makes me think back. We had Roscoe P. Coltrane on the podcast last year, I think it was, and he's not long out of prison himself. His issues that he had, he'd done quite a long stint, let's say,
long time.
And he was back, and he was saying a similar thing to yourself. He was now an independent artist. He wanted to put the music out, tell his story, and give people that background and understanding of what his life was like back then, but also just how lucky he is to now be where he is, and to move forward with his life, and to be positive. And obviously there isn't the kind of religious aspect to his stuff necessarily. Still that kind of positivity and moving forward, and being an artist where he's independent, so he can kind of like really say what he wants to really say, and doesn't have to worry about commercializing it or not touching on certain subjects. He can kind of just do what he wants. So it's great to hear that you're kind of in a similar vein, I guess, and being able to say that as well.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I think that's great, man. And we all evolve. And I think that's important, because we have a responsibility as leaders in the community and just for the next generation. I hope that, and I see like there's a lot of young people. There's a girl named Bree Triller. She's really dope. She's a Christian hip hop artist, or a Christian artist as well. And I hate saying that, but it's what they put a label on you. So I'm okay with it. And I didn't expect that label, but I'm glad, man, because like I said, I'm going to be able to, and this is, I want to say this, it's very important for every artist, no matter whether you do gospel, Christian, hip hop, straight up hardcore, whatever you do, it's important to know your purpose. And that's the thing. I celebrate any artist that understands what they were put on this planet to do and to make music for. And in my case, I know that my mission is solely to make music that points others to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. So, I mean, I have accepted that. Now, don't get it twisted. It will be different. That's the thing about being in my space, is that you're going to get the criticism from the Christians who think this is crazy that you're making music like this. And then you got the people who aren't even Christians that are like, well, I thought you could. So it's like, but I have to just do whatever the Lord puts on my heart, man. And I'm really excited. Next year, I have a song that's going to drop in the summer that I promise you we'll be having this conversation again about that record. Like, you might want me to just come back and just talk on the record, because I really think that, this project is going to make some noise. I didn't expect Count Your Blessings to do what it did, as far as like, and really what it did more so than just put out a great message is it reintroduced to and introduced to most who Mike Etheridge was, and who he is. And I'm gonna tell you, it's more to come. Trust me. This music is in my blood, bro. You gonna love like a record I got called Holy Matrimony. It's all singing, like a singing type record. It's gonna be interesting to hear the new Mike E doing like the melodies and stuff on these hooks and on these verses, man, because that's a part of it too. But I wanted to show, because even with the Neptunes, rapping was a part of what I did. It just with Teddy, he wasn't letting it happen because it was R&B. You know what I mean? But I feel great because I get to be all of me now. I don't have to just be the R&B guy trying to get a check.
Can use every facet.
Yes, thank you. There you go. Yes, sir. And I appreciate you for bringing me on too, bro. Let me say that, because you supported the record. You brought me on your podcast, and a lot of people, they pick and shoot. No, not me. I feel like every person, music connoisseur, and every podcast, every little thing matters, man, at this point, because there's a message to get out. And not just the Mike Etheridge story, but the whole Future Records story, the whole Neptune story, all of that, man. I think it's important for people to know exactly what happened and the truth of what happened, and not just accept, okay, well, that's what, no. Let me tell you what really happened. You know what I mean? So thank you.
No, and it's definitely my pleasure. And I must say, a lot of our audience, I'm a now middle-aged man, I guess, technically, and a lot of our audience, they weren't even born sort of in the year sort of 2000 or after that. There's a lot of younger people that listen to us. And when we talk about a lot of the older tracks and a lot of the older Neptune stuff, they're just like, I never knew that. I've never heard that. And so it's amazing to have someone like yourself on here to be able to talk about those kind of slightly older times and to school everybody so that they understand where Chad and Pharrell came from, and to understand that it wasn't just them, as we've, seen in certain interviews and in certain movies and whatever it might be. There is a slightly different story.
Listen, there's a slightly different story, a true story. And I think the fans deserve that. Listen, you can't cram everything into a movie. Listen, I don't knock what anybody has done or anything. I'm just going to tell you what I know to be true and what are the facts of how this thing developed into what you see today. You know what I mean? So I'm excited, man. And also stay tuned for my album next year. And I'll also be dropping my book, Through the Eyes of the Third Neptune, which I think is going to be really major. And that's something that I want to do just for legacy purposes, so that will always be out there, that anyone who wants to know, we can actually get the true story. And it won't just be like, this is going to go from like how we went today. It's going to talk about everything, but it's also going to get into my journey out of the music industry. You're going to hear stuff. Listen, you're going to hear stories about Future Records and what happened in that studio that you've never heard before, but they are relative to you understanding how God worked in everyone's life to bring all this together, man. So yes.
That sounds amazing. I'm very much looking forward to, the new music next summer,
Yes.
the book as well, and we'll get you
Yes.
back to kind of talk through all of it as well.
Yes,
Because I think
sir.
that'll be amazing for people to like hear from your voice as well, and not just, read it or, have an audio book or whatever it might be.
Yes,
One
sir.
very final thing before I let you go.
Okay.
And we wrap up. You mentioned a moment ago about kind of, community and new artists and stuff like that. And I know to yourself, and it seems to be to a lot of artists that are from Virginia, that Virginia is very, very important to them as a place, and a place where they've kind of grown up. And as as Pharrell says, and as the music festival says, there's something in the water there. There surely must be. So what I just want to get your take on, what your life is like now in Virginia, how you see Virginia, and how you see the kind of the community and the music hopefully prospering in Virginia at the moment.
Oh yeah, I think that it's doing great. They're still carrying Pusha T and Family have the Cousins Festival, which is great. I think that's an amazing movement. You got a lot of great things happening in Virginia. And still, Timberland Way is actually this coming weekend, which they're going to be celebrating him, and Bink and Hannon and Danger and all those guys will be involved in that. So I think that Virginia is continuing. But what I will say is I think we got to come together more, you know what I mean? And not just to celebrate the greatness of the greats that have come out of Virginia, but rather create a space for the new artists that are coming out of Virginia to be showcased. Because trust me, there's still the talent here. It's just they don't have the capacity to be seen. Now, because I will say, even in one of the later conversations that Pharrell and I had a few years ago, was that, and he was like, there's no one there. You guys don't have a record company. There's no major studio. So I get it, how hard it is. So my thing is, if we understand how hard it is, let's create a space for there to be, a platform, because that's why Pharrell is where he is, because Teddy created a space, Timberland's where he.
Do you see that kind of, sorry, I was going to say, do you see that kind of at least partly happening at the moment with the likes of Atlantic Park that's being built down by the beach? Yeah. I know some of it's housing and stuff like that, but there's a theater and there's studios that can be used by people and stuff.
Well, I think that yes, we can invest, and we need to invest in the community, and that's economic development. But I'm talking about the kind of development like that happened at Future Records, that birthed Pharrell, that birthed Chad, that birthed me, that birthed even everything, the Clips, because it started with Future Records still. So I'm just saying,
places where like organic things can happen.
That's what I'm talking about. Where organic things can happen, where it's not economically driven. There's no necessarily profit margins being considered, but it's about the talent and it's about the people. I don't understand. That's just my take. Because again, if you open those doors and you open those platforms, you're gonna find someone that you can take and go to the next level. So I think that's what Virginia is missing, man. And I think that you just think about it. If everyone from Virginia who is successful in the music industry were to invest into music culture in the 757, what would that look like?
Yes. It amazes me slightly that so many amazing artists have come out of that fairly kind of small area, I guess, in terms of population and stuff like that versus the big cities on the West Coast in New York and Atlanta and things. But it's still not necessarily
and a lot of people
talked about as much.
And again, I think too, the focus has to be there on the people of the city, at some point in order for that to happen. You got to create a space. You got to create a space like the talent show created a space. You know what I mean? Even though we didn't even perform in the talent show that Teddy had, it brought everyone from all over the city together to come and be at that talent show where people did perform, and acts were birthed out of that. So I think, again, it's just a matter of opening the door and creating a platform for that. But I'm just speaking from a guy on the outside. Like I'm not in that space to be able to necessarily make it happen at that level. But I think it can be done if we came together and focused on that aspect of it. But I am going to try to do something on my level with something to like a showcase and kind of bring that vibe of Princess Anne High School back, because man, it's still, and we do, and now don't get me wrong, there are other entities in the 757 that I've seen that are doing an amazing job with doing what they can to put on those platforms for the Virginia artists. But I'm just saying, if we get some of the bigger names to put their efforts behind it, man, it would be crazy to see how it would work. Because you would see people like how you saw us come out of the woodworks, Pharrell and Chad, like the great musicians. You would see that happen here, where now we would start to say, oh, I didn't know that person was here. Who are they? You know what I mean? So I think it's just, you got to open the door. But again, we don't have the kind of culture in Virginia. It's a military town. It's slow. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? There's no real industries here. So it's not like an Atlanta or New York or LA where it can thrive that way. But it just takes the investment of the people. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure.
That's my take on it.
Nice. Well, hopefully we will see Virginia continue to be on the up over the years.
I'm gonna do my little part over here in my little corner.
Exactly.
Inspiration.
No doubt. Exactly.
Though, yes, sir.
Thank you, Mike. Just before you go, where can everybody kind of follow you online and stuff like that if they want to see what you're up to?
Instagram is going to be Mike Etheridge 757. And then if you want to, on Facebook, I do a lot of Facebook posting because I'm an OG. You know, the OGs on Facebook. So look up Michael Etheridge and Michael E. Etheridge. That's the page you want to go follow or request me. And I don't do much Twitter or X, but
good.
But I
stay away from that.
Yeah, I try my best. There's too much going on there. So about, you know what I mean? But I just just look me up, and I'm gonna definitely be promoting on these social sites as I do different things. So you're gonna see it, and it's gonna be out there, man. And I'm hoping that I can encourage you and inspire you to just go to the next level in your life and whatever that may be.
Amazing, an amazing way to end it.
All right, man.
Mike, thank you so much. Appreciate you coming on here. All the links to Mike's socials will be in the show notes and on the website, so you can head over there, give him a follow. Be sure to check out the single as well as all the previous stuff as well. And there'll be a link to the shop. Go and buy a nice album as well. Got it all. Thank you, Mike.
And the vinyl copies are coming, so y'all just stay tuned.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Brilliant. Great stuff. Thank you, Mike.
You have a great one, man. Peace.
You too, man. Okay, a really big thanks to Mike for joining us for this episode. And as mentioned, we'll have all of the links to his socials down in the description and the show notes. We're going to get on to a few bits of news from the last couple of weeks. Very briefly, we're going to touch on these. So we've had some new jellyfish, Adidas jellyfish released in the last week or so. The green and grey pair that we've seen people wearing over the last number of weeks or months. I unfortunately took another L on a green pair, thanks to the Adidas Confirmed app. They sold out pretty much immediately. Not available anywhere else at the moment, so still haven't got my hands on a pair. If anyone has, a pair available anywhere in a EU size 43 roughly, and they don't want the crazy amount that these are reselling for, please do feel free to reach out. As part of the launch of the new colorways of the jellyfish, we also saw a Virginia pop-up store at Pharrell's Atlantic Park in VA. This was selling various bits of merchandise that you can now get on blackyacht.rock. Pharrell made a brief appearance there as well. Lots of merch, lots of bits and pieces to buy. Yeah, a collaboration with Adidas to launch the pop-up store there. So if you're in the Atlantic Park area in Virginia Beach, you can head down there to buy more merch. I'm not sure how long it's actually open for. I don't know if it was just a very short sort of weekend type thing, whether it's going to be there a little bit longer. But yeah, if you want some of the merch, you can check out that place, or as I say, you can head over to the website and there's still plenty of merch available. Tying into that, we also got a new music video. That was for the song Back to VA from the Black Yacht Rock album that, again, you can download from the website. Quite a simplistic video. Features family in his truck driving through, I assume this is kind of, the Virginia Beach area. A lovely song, still part of that album, which I rate very, very highly. And I really hope to see them do more with the album in the coming weeks or months or whatever it may be. Because there's some really great tracks on there. Another couple of sneaker bits of news. We saw the Inigo Levi's Air Force These come out and initially release on the Human Made website. There's 2 versions of this shoe. There's a light and a dark version. I think the dark version was a Human Made store kind of exclusive thing, because it doesn't look like it's going to be releasing via Nike. I was interested in a darker pair, but the sale went live at about 5 a.m. finish time, and I didn't manage to wake up, so I didn't manage to get a pair of either colorway. But these are launching on the sneakers app next week, and I can tell you the date. It is going to be, well, as I'm recording this extra part of the podcast on the Wednesday evening, these actually release tomorrow on the Thursday. So by the time you hear this podcast, these probably will be out already. But please let us know if you manage to get hold of a pair or not. I will probably try and get hold of a light pair. I think we've mentioned on the podcast previously, I'm not normally a fan of denim on sneakers, but these do look really, really good. And I'm still yet to get a pair of any of the Nego Air Force 3 releases. So I'm going to try and get hold of a pair of these. Now, in BBC Ice Cream news, board flips are back. So friend of the podcast, Jimmy Gorecki, posted on Instagram, I believe earlier this week or at the weekend, a new version of the original board flips in the kind of watermelon colorway. So the green and the pink. These look like they are going to get a new release, and I've heard that some of the other original colorways will also be coming out as well at some point in the future. There's no set date on these yet, but if you were, a board flip fan back in the day, or you've kind of grown to like them over the years and, you weren't necessarily around when they first came out, this could be your chance to get hold of a pair. So like I say, no set dates yet, but these will be hopefully coming soon. They do seem to be in collaboration with Reebok, from what I could see with the tags. The shoe itself looks very, very similar to the originals in terms of the design, the colors, etc. I want to see, some comparisons a bit nearer the time when these get released to see, what the actual differences are. But they do look very, very similar. The one main difference I did notice was the box and the packaging. Those of you that remember the original board flips came with a fairly basic cardboard black shoebox, which had the Cones and Bones logo, I think on the top, on the lid, and then also said ice cream around, around the side. These new board flips come with a similar kind of, basic rectangular box, but they have the print and the kind of colorway of the boutiques. So, those of you that have seen the box, the boutiques, will know that, they had that very different design, a very kind of over the top packaging and extras that kind of came with it. With the new board flips, we won't see all of the extras and all the sort of fancy boxing, but we do see that kind of overall design. So that'll be interesting to see, what they're like when they come out, and whether we get kind of different flavors, as the ice creams were called back in the day, and what new colorways we get. So we'll report on that if and when we hear more. And then one final reminder, and that is, again, if you are heading to see the Clips in Paris in just a few weeks' time now, in November, then please do give us a shout. There's a few of us that are meeting up there probably before the show at some point, and maybe kind of over the course of that weekend. So if you're attending the show and you want to come and hang out and say hello, then again, drop us a message on Instagram or send us a message from the website, and we will add you to the kind of group chat that we have, and we will arrange something a bit more specific nearer the time. But I think that's it for this episode. That's all of the news. Again, a massive thanks to Mike for joining us. Massive congratulations to Rafa and Jules. They have now had their gorgeous baby. So a big congratulations to them. And we'll be back in a couple of weeks' time, hopefully. And hopefully Rafa will be back by then. In the meantime, as I've mentioned already, you can find all the links and whatnot in the show notes and over on the website. You can generally find me at Steve R. Penny online. You can find Rafa at Sneakartel. And we'll leave it there for now. So thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.